No upset brewing here. The Indiana Hoosiers dominate the Washington Huskies.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every single day. A reaction episode, a bonus episode for you on this fine Saturday afternoon. How about those Hoosiers as they get it done again? They dominate the Washington Huskies at home on the national stage, 31-17 final score. Indiana stays undefeated. We're breaking it all down today. The offense was good. The defense was good. What's coming up next for this Indiana team? We'll have all that for you in this bonus episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Final score, 31-17. Hoosiers take down Washington. And look, there's a reason that I said the Hoosiers could be on upset watch here going into the weekend because you saw how talented Washington is. They are a really good team defensively, really disciplined on the defensive side of the football, and their offense wasn't bad. I just think Indiana's defense was much, much better. And so what a great win, a gritty win, one that I think Indiana had to work a little bit harder for than some of the fans may have anticipated, but a 31-17 win over that Washington team, who I think still is going to beat some folks down the stretch, is really a nice win. And you do it in the spotlight. College GameDay was there. Everybody was watching, had their eyes on this game. Everybody wanted to see, is this the week that Indiana slips up and finally falls back down to earth? And no, sir, that is not going to happen this week. And let's start on the offensive side of the football. Of course, no Kurtis Roark. Was that a problem? Didn't seem like one to me. Tayven Jackson, 11 of 19, right, throwing the football, 124 yards, had a really nice touchdown pass, did have the interception that Washington did cash in on to keep this thing close. But I think overall, Tayven played a really, really clean and effective game of football. He also was effective on the ground, right? Carried it 6 times at 17 yards and also scored on the ground as well. And so overall, you've got to be impressed with Tayven Jackson's performance today. The spotlight was not too big. The game was not too fast. And as I told you, and as I told Roman Tomashoff of Locked On Huskies in our crossover episode on Friday, Tayven Jackson's been here before. This is not his first glimpse, his first taste of starting D1 Power 4 college football. This was nothing new to him. And you could see that in this game on Saturday as Indiana takes down Washington 31-17. Tayven Jackson led them to a win. And I think that's something that we need to give him props for, give him credit for in this football game. And Indiana did exactly what they said they were going to do. We ran the football. I can already tell you who my Roy Player of the Week is going to be coming up on Tuesday. It's going to be Justice Ellison. 29 carries, 123 yards, and a rushing score for number 6. The 1-2 punch of him and Tyson Lawton is something special that Curt Cignetti was able to put together this season. And don't shy away from giving Tyson Lawton his credit, right? 17 had 12 carries, 41 yards, and he was able to come in, I think, in relief for Justice Ellison because, look, 6 touched the ball 29 times. I mean, that's a lot of carries in a big boy football game, and he carried the rock so effectively, and Indiana went right at this offense or this Washington defensive line. Heck, that Washington defensive line had the huge goal line stand, and we're thinking, oh boy, all right, they're here to play, right? Washington is here to play. But Indiana didn't shy away from it. They didn't go away from what they know works, what they know has gotten them to this point. And we figured we were going to run the ball a little bit more because of Kurtis Roark not playing. And did you hear them say in pregame how he was actually throwing a little bit this morning? How about that? He obviously wasn't going to play, but that's good news for what's coming up and what's ahead, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And then you got to talk about the defense for this Indiana squad. Just all over the football. They made it miserable for whatever quarterback decided to play for Washington. Listen to some of these stats that the quarterbacks had, okay? Will Rogers was the one that ran or would throw the football, but you have to know, and as we saw just a couple of times, Williams would run it a little bit as well. But Will Rogers, 19 of 26, 202 yards. That's not a bad stat line. If you just looked at that, right, you're thinking, oh, that's a pretty good performance. No touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Indiana cashes in on those. Indiana takes advantage. And one was, of course, the pick 6 to start the game, which is why this defense deserves so much credit on a day that the offense was not as effective or impactful as it has been through the first few games, or I guess the first, 7 games of the year. The defense got everything started with D'Angelo Ponce, who had both interceptions today, by the way. The first one, of course, being the pick 6 to get the game going. Another one, just a super athletic play. I don't know how he came up with it. High points the football, keeps his eyes on it, jumbles it as he's falling down, and ends up getting his second pick of the day. So is Ellison our player of the game? Or is it Ponce as the player of the game? You got to tell me. Drop those down in the YouTube comments, because it's really hard to decide. And Washington just didn't have a ton of big chunk plays. And that's what Indiana prides themselves on time and time again. Couple of longer runs. I think maybe a 46-yarder was the longest one. A couple of passing plays that went for 20 or 30. But you just kind of kept everything in front of you and didn't let Washington build a whole lot of momentum. And the thing that I like to see is Indiana put the game away. Washington did not quit. They did not give up. And shout out to the Huskies. That's a really well-coached team. And if they get some more talent out there, they're going to be a good program. And they will bounce back from losing everybody to Alabama a year ago. But the highlight here is Indiana keeps rolling. 8-0 on the season, still undefeated in conference play. And the question is, can anybody beat this Indiana team? What's coming up next? And will the spotlight continue? We'll talk about all that coming up next on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's bonus episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers will get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed if you win your first $5 bet. So let me say that again. Get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com right now. Go to that. Go to FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, you could have done that today if you put $5 on Indiana. That's pretty much a gimme right now with Indiana winning all their football games. So go to FanDuel.com right now. They'll give you $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet on America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel.com. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is bonus episode, also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is my go-to ticketing app for all sorts of events. Sports, music, comedy, theater, you name it, they have got it. Hey, you could have used the Game Time app today and been there to see Indiana take down Washington. Sold out crowd. Didn't it look great on Memorial Stadium? All the flyover shots they did were just a beautiful scene on TV today. And you could have been there if you would have used the Game Time app. Good news is we got more home games, or if you even want to go to a road game for Indiana football, you can use the Game Time app. Download it today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. They have their best price guarantee. They also have the views from your seat, panoramic views, so you know exactly where you're going to be and what you're going to see at any venue in the country. Download the Game Time app today and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? It's game time. Welcome back into this bonus episode of Locked On Hoosiers over the weekend. Appreciate you being here. Shout out to all of my audio listeners, whether you are on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, doesn't matter to me. I appreciate you being here. and taking it all in. And for those of you on the YouTube side, I appreciate you all making this your first listen or your first watch Monday through Friday, since that's when we normally post episodes, but also on this bonus episode as well. Be sure that you like the video on YouTube. Comment your thoughts below. Were you impressed with Indiana's 31-17 win over Washington? And if you're not already, become an everydayer by subscribing to the YouTube channel. It takes one tap. You'll become an everydayer. You'll be notified when we post new episodes every day of Locked On Hoosiers. Well, I want to highlight something. The fact that Indiana was once again in the spotlight today, was once again in the heart of college football, where everybody had an eye on us, right? College GameDay was here. I think they did a really, really good job with the entire presentation. Coach Corso got to come back and really just take it all in. That seemed like what he was doing today, was taking it all in. Of course, he picked Indiana. Most of the guys did. Pat McAfee, look, you may like him, you may not like him. I think he's great. I think he's a huge, great hire for ESPN, maybe the best one they've ever made. But you have to admit that he hypes up every crowd that he's in. And he did that with Indiana. He's an Indiana dude. He just had to get in the car and drive to Bloomington rather than take a flight somewhere. And I think they just really highlighted some special things about what Bloomington is for college athletics, not just college football. And here we were again, right? Curt Cignetti, undefeated team, top 15, College GameDay. And while this wasn't on a national big broadcast, it was on the Big Ten Network. I guarantee, I know, believe me, the amount of text that I got throughout this game, everybody was watching or at least keeping up with what Indiana did today. And we still performed at a high level. Wasn't clean. Cignetti talked about it. He wasn't impressed with the performance, and I can't wait to hear what he says on Monday during his weekly press conference. But the fact of the matter is, we still won the game when everybody was watching. And there's a lot of people, Hoosiers fans, I'm sure you come across them. There are a lot of people that want this team to fail. They don't want Indiana football to be good. They don't want Indiana crashing the party of the college football playoff or the Big Ten championship. And with the struggles of Ohio State today, who knows how good Oregon's going to be down the stretch, and nobody seemingly being competitive behind us. Nobody wants Indiana to be good. We're obnoxious. We're the newcomers. We don't even know what we're doing. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. They can't stand it. And here we were again, with a national audience in front of everybody, and we showed up and we showed out. And not just on the football field, man. Shout out to the fans who were lining up for College GameDay and who showed up and just enjoyed yourselves and took in the moment, something that we can never see again at Indiana if things go the wrong way. We hope there's many more College GameDays, but in an event where it just hasn't happened like this. It just has never looked like this before in the stands, around campus, and on the football field. Great things are happening in Bloomington. And so the biggest question that we always ask after a game like this is, well, what's next? What does Indiana have coming up? And the schedule gets tougher. There's no doubt about it. But I think we can all agree that the Nebraska game and the Nebraska win has looked a lot better. I'll be completely honest. As I'm recording this, Nebraska trails Ohio State 21-17. Ohio State still has the football. They may end up running away with this thing, but Nebraska played the Buckeyes extremely tough, and Indiana blew them out of the water. Indiana embarrassed them. Did they against Nebraska just a week ago, and now we get a nice win over Washington, and I'm telling you, that Washington team is going to beat somebody that they're not supposed to. They are good enough to do it. Will Rogers is a good enough quarterback. Those linebackers on the defensive side are talented enough to do it, and I think they're going to get up and get somebody. Here's what Indiana has left. At Michigan State, coming up this weekend, home versus Michigan, bye week, before we go to that Ohio State team. And if they don't start looking better, people are going to start picking Indiana to win that game. And then we have Purdue. Everything's in front of us. Everything is laid out perfectly for us to be a legitimate contender in the Big Ten and in the college football playoff discussion. They were talking about it at the end of the broadcast today, and it's not to be funny. It's not a joke. It's 100% serious. The Hoosiers are doing what they're supposed to do. We are in the running to be a playoff team in 2024. That's what's coming up next. And in terms of what's next on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll be back on Monday for a full breakdown of Indiana football, plus a basketball scrimmage this weekend that we need to talk about. More of an exhibition game against Tennessee. All that coming up on Locked On Hoosiers this coming week. So if this is your first time here on the podcast, audio or video, be sure that you flag it. Be sure you screenshot it. Do whatever you got to do. Follow, subscribe, notifications so you don't miss a new episode. Put this in your rotation. I promise you, you're going to have a good time. And for all my everydayers, thank you for being here. Hope you enjoyed the bonus episode this weekend. Indiana wins 31-17 over Washington. Can we go undefeated? So far, so good. We're back on Monday, Hoosier fans. Okay, so have a great rest of your weekend. Until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.